if you are going to become an ethical hacker or a system administrator, Linux permissions are very important to understand. File permission in Linux control who can read, write, and execute files on a directory. Understanding and managing these permissions is critical for maintaining the security and integrity of your system. In the previous video, I showed you how to create files and directories, and there is this particular command ls-l that I showed you that you are able to get detailed information or a list of directories and files that are available on your current location. And apart from displaying it in a list format, we also have this part that I mentioned, that is the permissions part. Okay, so you can see we have permissions here, and also I told you that this first part tells us is it a file or is it a directory. So for D, it stands for a directory, and if it starts with an hyphen, it means that that is a file. Okay, so you can use the ls-l command to check the permissions. Okay, so I'm going to be creating some other files that you are going to use, and with that we'll be able to modify permissions for those particular files. So I created a bunch of files from test 1 to test 6 that you are going to use to practice these commands with. So one thing you need to understand, we usually have 3 types of permissions, as you can see on the screen. We have read, write, and execute. So read permission allows users to view the contents that are inside the file. You can use the cat command, or you can open the file to check what is inside the file. So if you have the permission to read, it means that you can be able to see what is inside that file. Write permission allows you to modify a file content inside. It's like it allows you to change whatever is inside the file. So you can write and you can add new lines of either code or text inside that particular file. Then for execute, it usually allows you to run or to execute a program in the current directory that you are on. Without the execute permission, you can't be able to run that particular program. Okay, so you need the execute permission to run that program. The other thing to note is that these permissions are usually categorized into 3 groups. We have the owner permission. These are the permissions for the person who created the file. Then you have the group's permission for the group that that particular person belongs to. And then we have the others, which means the other users that are on that system, because Linux is a multi-user operating system. So this is the permission structure, as you can see. So the first 3 permissions are for the user or the owner of that particular file. Then the next 3 permissions are for the group, and the last 3 are for other users on the system. So to view permissions, you just type ls-l, then the name of the file. I'm going to do that. So let's say I want to view permissions for test 1. I'm going to say ls-l, then the name of the file. So for our case, we have test 1, and you can see I'm able to get the permissions for that particular file. So how do you modify permissions? Okay, let's say I want to add or remove permissions from different categories, for example, users, groups, and other users on our particular system. How do I change that? Okay, so there is a command called chmod command, which is used to change permission of a file or directory. So we can change, or we can interfere, we can modify or change permissions for both files and directories on your Linux system. So when it comes to modifying permission, you can modify the permission using symbolic or numeric modes. Okay, so those are the 2 methods that are used to modify permissions to your files and directories. So I'm going to start with the symbolic mode, whereby we use letters to represent where or who we want to allocate or to modify permissions for. So for example, if I want to change for a user, I use the U, which stands for the user or the owner of the file. If I want to modify for a group, I use G, letter G. And for other users on our system, I use O. And if I want to modify or change permissions for everyone, I use A. Okay, so let's start with that. Test 1, you can see right now the owner of that particular file has read and write, meaning that that particular user can read what is inside there and they can write inside there. And then we have the group. The group has only read permission, but they can't modify the file. Then other users, they can only read that particular file. Using the symbolic mode, I want to add write permission to the group of this particular user so that the groups can also have permission to write in this particular file. So we say chmod. Okay, then you have to give the letter of the group that you want to allocate. Okay, so U is for the user who created the file, G is for the group, O is for others. Okay, then A is for everyone. So for me, I want to give the group, so I'm going to say G, then plus, then the permission that I want to allocate. Okay, so plus is to add. Okay, so I want to add the write permission. Okay, then I'm going to write the name of the file. Okay, then if I go back to that ls-l, now you can see that our group has been given the write permission. Okay, so I can also add for others. So chmod for others, we said it's O, then plus write. Okay, then you are going to say file. Then you are going to say test1. Okay, so if I say ls-l, now you can see both categories, the user, the group, and the other users, they have the write permission to that particular file. How do you revoke or how do you remove permissions on a particular file? Okay, so we have file 2 here. So I'm going to say ls-l, then test2. So we have test2 here. You can see test2 has these permissions. So we call this default permissions. Default permissions are the permissions that come with the when you create a file. Okay, yeah, because we did not allocate any permissions, they just came with this particular file when we created the file. So you can see we have read write for the owner or the user who created the file, then read for group and read for others. So what I want to do, I want to revoke permission for read from others and also the group. Okay, so chmod, then I'm going to say, okay, let me start with the group, then you put an hyphen, okay, or a minus, and then you say that I want to remove write permission. Okay, then you can say it's test2, so test2. And I'll also do the same for the group. I'll also do the same for the others. Okay, then I'm going to say ls-l, then test2. And you can see I've removed permission for both the group and the other users on our system. Okay, let's look at how to give permission to everyone. Okay, so then we have test3. So what I want to do, I want to give maybe the execute command to everyone on this particular file. So I'm going to say A is going to represent everyone, then plus, and then I want to give the execute permission. Then we want to say test3. So if I say ls-l, then test3, you can see everyone has gotten the execute permission, and you can see the color of our file has changed. Okay, what about if I want to revoke permissions, okay, for every file? So we have test4. Okay, let's say I want to revoke the read permission for everyone, including the owner of the file. We can do that. You can say chmod, then everyone, then minus, then you can say read. Okay, let me say also write. Okay, let me just leave write. Let's modify the read. So I'm going to say test4. Test4. Okay, so if I say ls-l test4, you can see that no one has permission to read that particular file, but the owner has permission to write, which is funny, but it's okay. So if I say cat test4, you can see I'm being told permission denied because I don't have permission to see what is inside that file, but I can edit that file. Okay, you can see I still have, it's bringing an error down here telling me that I don't have permission to this file. So even if I have the right permission to write inside this file, I can't be able to read what is inside the file. So I'll just exit. So we have been able to see the symbolic mode of assigning or modifying permissions. Let's look at the numeric mode, okay? So the numeric mode is a bit different from the symbolic mode because here you have to do some bit of calculations. So I'm going to, as you can see on the screen, these are the representation whereby we have read, which is represented by number 4. Write is represented by number 2, execute is represented by number 1, okay? Then if you want to create a desired permission, you have to add the two numbers together as you can see on the screen. So I'm going to create more files, okay? So we have modified from test 1 to test 4. Maybe I can add test 7 and 8. Okay, so now we have from test 5 to test 8, okay, which we are going to play around with. So for the numeric number, we use numeric mode, we usually use the numbers, okay? So I'm going to say chmod. Let's say I want to, then before you allocate, wherever you're going to position that number, it's going to determine where the permission is going to apply. If it's the first number, it's going to apply to the owner or the user who created the file. If it's the second number, it's going to apply to the group, and the last number or the third number is going to apply to the other users on our system. So for example, okay, let me check first permissions for test 5. Okay, so you can see we have default permissions there, read write for use owner or use of the file. We have read write for the owner of the file, we have read for the group, and then we have read for others. Okay, so let's say I want to add the maybe write and execute. Okay, I want to add write and execute. So I want to add write to the group and execute to the owner of that particular file. Okay, so that the owner can be able to execute this particular file, and then the group can only read and write, but they can't execute the file. Okay, so I'm going to say chmod. Okay, then for read, write, execute, it's a full permission, so it's 4 plus 2 plus 1, which is 7. And then for read and write, which is 4 plus 2, which is 6. And then for the others, I only want them to read, which I'm going to give 1. And if you don't want any permission, you can give number 0, which means no permission. But for our case, I want others to be able to read that particular file. Okay, then I'm going to say test 5. Okay, if I say ls-l, then test 5. Okay, you can see that now the file has changed the color to this green color. So what I want to do, I want to give read, write, execute for the owner so that the owner can be able to read, write, and execute that file. Then I want to give read and write for the group, and then I want the others to only be able to read what is inside that particular file, but they can't write and execute that file. So I'm going to say chmod. So for the owner of the file, I'm going to give him full permission. So full permissions means read, write, and execute. So 4 plus 2 plus 1 is equals to 7. Then for the group, I want to give read, write. So 4 plus 2 is equals to 6. Then for the group, I want to give only the read permission, which is number 4. Then the name of the file. So if I say ls-l, then test 5. Okay, you can see we have read, write, execute for the owner, read, write for the group, and then read for the other users on our system. So how do I revoke permission? Okay, using the numeric representation, how do I revoke permission? So we just use the numbers. Okay, so I'm going to go to test 6. Okay, so those are the default permission. So what I want to do, I want to revoke permission for read to everyone. So I only want the owner of that particular file to be able to read and write, but no one else will be able to see what is inside that particular file. Okay, so I'm going to say chmod. Okay, then I'm going to say 6 for read and write for the owner, then 00 to remove permissions for everyone, then I'm going to say test 6. Then ls-l, then test 6. And you can see other users and groups, they don't have permission to read and write and execute to that particular file. So you can be as creative as much as possible depending on how you want to modify your permissions using the numeric mode. So it's up to you to choose which method works best for you. For me, I find that using the numeric mode to be much easier. For you, you might have a different opinion, but any of those are going to be able to enable you to modify the permissions. The other thing I want us to look at how to change ownership of a file or a directory from one user to another, okay? So you can be able to change ownership of files, okay? So if I say ls-l, you can see down here we have tests 7 and 8, and you can see that this particular file belongs to the curly user who belongs to a group called students, okay? And what if I want to change the ownership of that particular file? Okay, so I want to assign or to give someone else ownership of this particular file. Okay, so we use a command called chown or change ownership. Okay, so we are going to say chown. So we are going to say chown. Okay, then I want to modify for test 7. So before that, I want to check the users that are on our system. So I'm going to say tail. Okay, let me use tail. I explained tail in the previous videos, telling you that it's going to display the last 10 lines of a file. So I want to read the passwd file, which contains a list of users. And okay, we have a user we created here called Jacob. So I want to change the ownership for test 7 file to belong to Jacob. So it's going to change from curly to Jacob. Okay, so I'm going to say chown or chown, however you want to call it, then the name of the new owner, then the name of the file. Okay, so the new owner is going to be Jacob, so this user must be on the system for this command to work. Then we are going to say test 7. Okay, so you can see changing ownership of test 7 operation not permitted. Okay, so we don't have permission to change ownership. So here is where you borrow permission from the administrator or the root user to change ownership of files. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in front of the command and then I'm going to add sudo. Okay, so I'm going to borrow permission so that I can change ownership of that particular file. Then I'll type my password, and with that we'll have modified the permissions of that particular file. Now you can see the file belongs to Jacob and it previously belonged to Kali. You can also change ownership of groups. Okay, so I can change the ownership of groups from students to maybe someone else. So maybe I can change the ownership of this group from students to Jacob, because we said that when you create a user, there is also a group with the same username that is also created. Okay, so I can say tail, then /etc/group. Okay, let's, instead of Jacob, let's give it to this group called YouTube. Okay, because Jacob belongs to that group. Okay, so we are going to say chown or chown. Then we are going to say, so for group you have to put a full colon at the front, then the name of the group. So the name of the group is YouTube, and then the name of the file is test. Okay, let's go with the tests. Okay, let's go with test 7. Okay, so we need to use sudo. So I'm going to add sudo in the front, and with that you can see now the ownership has changed from students to YouTube. Okay, and we also change from Kali to Jacob. Okay, so that's how you modify this. That's how you change ownership of files on your Linux system. And with that, we have come to the end of the video. Hope you have enjoyed the video and you have learned a thing or two about Linux permission, and hope that you're also enjoying the series, and make sure to check out the other videos so that you can be a Linux professional. Catch you in the next video. So make sure to like and subscribe. Peace.